Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spindle TV. I'm your host tonight, Laney Shaughnessy. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for joining. I'm jumping in a little bit early because I'm just kind of getting things set up here and making sure that my audio and video are good and all that stuff. But tonight's project is going to be a little bit different. And we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. Thanks and hello, Michael, um, Mike Smith, Roger, Ronnie, Kevin, and Michael. How are y'all doing today? Hopefully things are going well. Um, Things are going good over here at this end, and we are gonna try to get through tonight's class in one class. It might be broken up into a couple because it's not something normally that I would do in a video. And I don't know, normally when I'm creating models and all, I'm just kind of doing them in my own time. And so never really done them under the clock, right, to see how long it takes me. Just, when it's finished kind of thing. So it ought to be interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to look at an imported picture. This picture, when it's traced, very nice V carving that it creates. But I like the image, and I would like to have it as a 3D model. Now I'm going to be using Vectric Aspire for this to help me with the modeling and everything. And I'm probably most likely going to use quite a few of the modeling tools, the shape building tools that Vectric has to offer. I don't know. I don't think I'll use all of them, but quite a few of them to figure out the approach. This tutorial, one, hopefully you guys and girls pick something up out of it, but also it's kind of a little bit for me to keep my skills sharp and to test my modeling ability, my approach to modeling from an image. Because we know in Vectric Aspire that we can create models and shapes from vectors. We know we can also import an image and create a model right from that imported image and have a little bit of cleanup and stuff to do. Well, this is basically taking an image or a concept. We talked about concept design last week with the silver oak sign. Well, now I'm looking at a vector that I really like, and I've seen some other tutorials on modeling and everything that Vectric has out and stuff, where they modeled a vine using acorns and oak leaves, kind of similar to the vectors and projects we did last week with the acorns and oak leaves. And I thought, man, I'd really like to kind of do that, but there's already a video out there, so I wanted to do something different. So it's going to be kind of a grapevine, if you will. And we'll jump in the software here in just a second and take a look at it. But using the Create Shape tool, using the single rail sweep, centerline sweep tool, possibly the two-line sweep tool, two-rail sweep tool, should I say, and some other things, hopefully we'll come up with, an approach and all. We're going to have to redraw some of the vectors or create new vectors to make this model happen. And hopefully it won't be too boring for you guys and girls. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. And if you do not have Vectric Aspire, stick around and join us, because one day you may. Maybe something in tonight's class will be beneficial to you. I don't know. It's like I said, I've never really, when I've taught classes to you guys and girls, we've imported vectors and we've created shapes and things like that. And we've done some modeling, US flags and things like that in the past. But this is going to be something more organic, fruit of the vine, if you will, grapevines and stuff. So let's see that. Let's see how we go with it. And if you like it, give a thumbs up. If you don't, you know what to do. Right? Give a thumbs down. I think there's still a thumbs down on there. But hopefully you'll like it. Let's jump over into the software and let's take a look at what we've got to work with. Okay, So we're going to jump over to camera 3. Let's see here. Camera 2, there we go. And let's get me down in the bottom left corner, down here. All right, that's good. And let's take a look at, first of all, let's take a look at the image that we're looking at here. So I'm looking to take this image here and turn it into a 3D model. I like this image, just as it is, and it V-carves very well. I'm going to show you the V-carve version of this with just a simple trace tool, tracing the image and things, and creating the vectors, and then just doing it as a V-carve. But I'd like to model this as well. And we have some unique things that are, we have this vine that is wrapping around the other vine. So we're going to have some weaving, if you will. We're going to have some weaving and stuff. And then we have our leaf here that we're going to work on. And it's got its veins and everything. And then, of course, we have the grapes. And when we accumulate the grapes and create the shapes of those grapes, we need them to kind of, if you will, flow properly. So it looks like a stacked pile of grapes on this vine. Now, if we look at the traced vectors, this is the image with the traced vectors and everything. It's traced everything. It's traced, the outside vectors and all these inside kind of wood grain, if you will, that vine grain and stuff, which we're not going to use. And if we look at the image again, that kind of grain on that vine, all of that grain that was, in there, and all of the veins and kind of things in the leaf, the trace tool has, traced all of that. Now there's going to be a lot of recreation here. I got to redraw a lot of things and stuff, but let's take a look at this as a V-carve. And let's see how this image would look as a V-carve. So if we go over to the toolpath side of the software and into the toolpath preview, I've already created the toolpath. Basically, I've kind of set a flat depth, a limit to the cut on the V-carve of 0.24. Don't know why it wasn't 0.25. I don't know why I have the 4 in there, but it must have been a mistype. I'm simply using a 60-degree V-bit and an 1/8 inch end mill. And with this toolpath, if we were to preview it, it creates a very nice looking V-carve, of the image. If I were to add some color to this, let's say kind of a brown or what have you, let's go back to the material color and let's look at this cut. So as far as a V-carve with a 60-degree V-bit, very nice looking graphic. Nothing wrong with it at all. I could see that me using that in projects where it's applicable and stuff. But what I'd like to do is I would like to model this. I would like to do this as a 3D model. And I would like to take you on the journey as I approach this. Again, I'm hoping that we can get through this in one class. It might take more than one class. Like I said, I've never really timed myself when I make models and stuff. But there's going to have to be a lot of reapproach to this, as far as I'm not going to be able to use a lot of the existing vectors to create the model that I need for the parts, the individual parts. And then we're also going to break this up into different sections. So we're going to have our main vine that is going to be one model. The leaf is going to be another model. Maybe even part of the leaf. It might be broken up in a couple models. The veins in the leaf are going to be another component model. And then our grapes, and then of course our swirling vine that kind of wraps around and overlaps the other vine and blends in. So there's some interesting concepts here as far as modeling, and I again on my approach, I've never modeled this project. This is just something new. Literally about an hour ago, I got the image and I got the idea of, okay, if I wanted to make a model like I do from images, I have customers sending me things all the time saying, hey, can you model this for me? And it's not a problem. You know, they get a decent time turnaround and everything for that. But I've never just sat here and just, had something that was quite as organic and modeled it. And I thought it would be an interesting challenge for myself to keep my skills up, but also maybe, just maybe, there's something in this class that will help you in your modeling ventures if you ever come across something that you would like to have as a 3D model. Now, before we get started, let's see here. Yeah, Michael, let me just throw this in there. Michael Meselik had a very good point. If you don't have the Vectric Aspire software, you can download a trial version, and it's great to play along. Now, whatever I create from this, I will provide the model as well as the vectors, because again, it makes a very nice V carving. I'm not sure exactly what type of project it would be applied to, what type of sign or something. But I will provide the vectors for that V-carve as well as the model that ends up being created as a free download for you guys and girls. I'll make sure that you have all the vectors and everything that we create in case you want to kind of duplicate this or practice on your own. Doing this from time to time, everybody has a busy schedule. And things piling up and jobs that they got to get done, or they work a full-time job and things like that. But just taking every once in a while, just kind of like, okay, I just want to practice. I just want to try this and do something that's out of your wheelhouse. And this is in my wheelhouse, but not really. It's a design I've never approached before. There's a lot of elements here. We've got weaving that's happening. So we've got, a couple of tools that we're going to have to use. And I don't know how it's going to turn out in the end, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to seeing the results, and I'm hoping it's good results. But no matter what, you guys and girls will get the file. Okay. So all that talking out of the way, let's go ahead and get back over into the software. And again, I'm going to keep this picture over here in the corner as kind of my muse, so I can see how the models overlay and blend in with one another and overlap and stuff. But we're going to work off of these vectors, knowing that I have to redraw some vectors. We're going to work off these vectors that might help speed things along just a little bit. And these vectors were created very simply, and I will delete them right now. Gone. And let's go ahead and bring this image in and trace it real quick so you can see how the image was created. So let's zoom into this. Let's go over to the Trace Bitmap tool. And in the Trace Bitmap tool, I'm going to turn the fading off. And I am using a black and white trace, and 75.75 on the threshold gives me this detail that you see on the screen here. Any less than that, I could lose detail. Any more than that, I could get more detail than I want and things. And so 75 is going to be my threshold. I'm using a default corner fit, the basic noise filter, default noise filter, which is 2, and I'm simply going to preview that. I'm going to click apply. Close the tool, and then again, normally we would turn the bitmap layer off, but I'm actually just going to move that image over here as a muse, and now I have these vectors. These are the same vectors that I just deleted. So, there you go. All right. Now, like I said, looking at the V-carve of it, great. I like it. I mean, I would use that in a project. Again, trying to find a project applicable for it. I think someone said a wine sign or something like that. it's great. I have no problem with that. But we want to model it. So let's first of all, let's take a look at the model tools that we would use and what their benefits are and everything. Let's first of all talk about the way this vine wraps around the other vine and wraps around itself as well. There's weaving there. There's that over under. Now we talked about weaving and stuff 2 classes back and everything with that center rail sweep tool. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer here, and I'm going to turn off layer 1 just to hide those vectors for a minute. And in layer 2, this new layer here, I'm going to simply take my draw curve tool and I'm going to draw a curve. So let's go ahead and draw a curve. And I'm going to have that curve overlap itself like that, kind of representing almost like a weave, right? Where it's going to overlap. Now I'm going to take my arc tool and I'm going to create a small arc. Okay. Now I'm going to take this arc and I'm going to hold the control key down and I'm going to pull out a copy of this arc. I'm going to pull out 1, 2, 3 copies. And I would like to size these copies down in 3 different sizes. Let's go from here to there. Let's size this one down a little bit more. From there to there, there to there. So I've got these 3 different sizes from large to small here that I would like this shape to take on, and that's called our cross sections. These are going to be our cross sections and stuff. So let's look at the center rail sweep tool, create a shape extruding along a vector or center line. And we have our drive rail, which is going to be this loop that I just created. Okay, so we'll use that as our selection. Now from this selection, from this green node here all the way around to the end, that is the path that one of my 3 shapes or all 3 of my shapes are going to follow. Now let's just use one for the example right now. When I click on this here, you can see my mouse. I wish I could zoom in on the mouse, but the mouse has that cross section kind of little symbol next to it, which is basically the same as this symbol over on the left. And I'm going to use a 40-60 weave kind of over under setting. And if I click apply, it's going to create this shape. And if we look at the 3D model, it's basically created this shape with that over under, that 60-40 over under, right? Basically kind of a weave overlap. But now what happens if I introduce 2 more cross sections, different sizes? So what I'm going to do is I've got my first cross section selected here, and I want that cross section to run from here to right about here. So I'm going to click. And notice when I clicked on this, it brought the cross section all the way to the end. Well, I'm actually going to drag that to here. I want that to go from here to here, that bigger, that first one. Now I'm going to select my second cross section, and I want that second cross section to run to right about here. So from this point to this point. And then my third cross section, this smaller arc, I want that to run to the end. Okay. Now, based on those 3 cross sections and my path that I've set out, when I go ahead and click apply, let's change this to 60 again. I wish it would stay on 60, but it doesn't. When I click apply, we can look at our 3D model and we can see that we've gone from that larger section down to that smaller cross section based on the path. Okay. And by doing that, that's going to give us kind of more of an organic look on our, when we create our vine and things. Okay. And so when we're using the 2-rail sweep tool, or we're using the single rail sweep tool, we can create multiple cross sections, and we can have those cross sections follow that path. In this case, I went from that larger to smaller. Now, with the way this looks, imagine again if this being a snake, right? We have the body of the snake going down to the tail of the snake, right? And the tail gets, smaller as it goes around, right? That kind of thing. Well, we're going to do the same thing with the vine. Maybe not this dramatic, right, of a shape size difference, but still we're going to have a little bit of variation in our vine. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and delete that component and delete these vectors. And let's come back in here and turn layer 1 back on. Now, in this layer here, all of the grain for the vine, I might use that when creating the texture of the model. Who knows? I don't know yet. I don't know where we're at. But what I would like to do is I would like to separate that grain from the other vectors. Let's go ahead and get things separated, and then we can start to redraw the vectors as needed and start creating our 3 different sections. To pause for a minute, everything that I'm doing in tonight's class is a Vectric Aspire project. So design and signs, this, as far as tracing the image and doing it as a VCarve, that can be done in Vectric VCarve Desktop or Vectric VCarve Pro or Vectric Aspire. But what I'm about to do with the modeling and what you just saw me do with those 3 cross sections in that path, that is an Aspire function only. Okay. All right. So all this is going to be Aspire work. All right. And so let's go ahead and start to separate this design. So I'm going to select all the vectors, and currently right now they're all grouped together, so I didn't have to draw a box around it. All I had to do was just click on it because they're grouped together. So what I'm going to do is, in our drawing tools, I'm going to ungroup all of these vectors. Okay, so that way all the little glistening light reflection of the grapes are separate from the grain of the vine and the outline of the vine and all that stuff. So they're all separate. Now what I'd like to do is I'm going to come in and start to separate this a bit. And I'm going to do that by holding down my shift key and deselecting kind of the main parts of the profile of the vine. So basically all of the vectors that create the outline of the vine. So we're going to go in here and we're selecting all the main vectors that create this outline, and basically I'm deselecting them. I'm turning them off, that selection off and everything. Now the grapes, I'll do them separate. Right now I'm kind of focusing on the main vectors that outline the vine, if you will. Now this vector here kind of goes into the leaf, so I'm actually going to turn that back on for a minute, and let's go up here, and because that leaf overlaps the vine, so that vector that connects that vine is not there. We'll have to create that. But let's go in here and turn off all of these vectors. I'm holding the shift key while I'm deselecting these things, and basically looking at this, I've got this one here and this one here. So that's where that vine kind of overlaps and goes into there. Here I got another one right there. That's where that kind of showing that separation. So coming around all of that, I'm going to go ahead and take these remaining vectors here, and I'm going to right click on them, and I'm going to move them to a new layer. And I'm going to call this layer, we'll call this our grapes layer. Now I know the leaf is part of that and also the grain, but I'm going to systematically deselect everything as I go. So we'll move that to that layer. And now up here in my layers, layer 2, which has those outlines, right? I'm going to rename that my vine, or vines in this case. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll change the color so that you know, when I turn everything back on, I can see the separate colors. Now, everything right now, the leaf and the grapes and the grain is all on the grapes layer right now. So they're all there, right? So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to come in, and since I'm on the grapes layer, I'm going to go ahead and start deselecting the grape vectors. So I'm holding I've got everything selected, and I'm holding down my shift key, and I'm going to go in and start deselecting all the vectors that make up the grapes. Now this is the most tedious part of this project, which is kind of separating everything so I can work with it. And this is where layers is super useful to me and to you as well, to separate complicated designs into less complicated layers that we can work with. Okay, so basically I'm just going through and selecting these vectors and making sure that whatever I miss, that I go back and, you know, select, right? Okay, so far let's get that one too, and let's come up here and select all of this, these things. And remember, when I deselect these, when I move the remaining selected items to a new layer, these grapes will remain on this grapes layer, right? And that's kind of what my goal is. Just a couple of more here. All right, oh, one more. So now all of my grapes are deselected, and everything else that's remaining, I'm going to right click and move to a new layer. And I'll just call this layer the leaf layer, right? And we'll keep it black and we'll click OK. Okay, so we'll click OK. And now if I come in here in my grapes layer, I can turn those on and off, right? Because they're on that layer. So on that grapes layer, I'll go ahead and let's kind of make them kind of a purple vector, right? For grapes, we'll make it kind of a purplish color. And let's turn off that layer, and that leaves us with our leaf and our kind of grain texture of the vector, right? So in our leaf layer here, we'll make that active. We'll come in, and now I'm going to start deselecting all of the grain. Making sure that, you know, I don't miss any. If whatever I miss, make sure I go back in and select it. So coming around to this side, we'll select this, and this little guy right here, and also that one right there. That's part of that grain texture coming through. This vector here we'll deselect. This, all of this, all of this, all of that, this whole thing, and then we'll go through and pick the remaining stuff that we might have missed. So looking at all of the grain, that leaves the leaf. Now, when I selected this vector, it selected all of not only the grain in here, but also the veins, you know, in here. And these veins have grain in them as well. So I want to go through and I'll deselect that. I want this to kind of be all the grain vectors, right? So I'm going to go through, and inside the veins, I'm going to make sure all those vectors are deselected. I'm not going to, any of the leaf, you know, veins out here, I'm not going to deselect that. It's only what's in this main vein running through this leaf. Okay? So it's only running through. And again, I've never worked with this, so I'm just kind of instructing you as I do it as to how I'm approaching this. This main vector that kind of makes up the main vein of the leaf, that in itself will probably be on its own layer at some point in time. But I believe I have selected all of the vein vectors, and whatever's left here, that's the leaf. Well, notice I named this this layer leaf, right, instead of grain. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll rename them in a minute, but let's go ahead and move. There's a couple of more here. Hold on a second. Hold down my shift key, and we've got this right here. This is part of the grain, and this. Now, if we use our imagination of this vine running through this leaf all the way to here, because it kind of wraps around, right here in this opening of the leaf petals, this is also grain of that vine. It's kind of what you can see through the leaf, and I'll show you in the actual picture when we go back. So let's select that. And I believe now, looking at this, I have everything. So whatever's remaining selected, I'm going to go ahead and move to a new layer. And I'm going to call this the leaf vector, because I already have leaf. It won't let me create the same name twice. And we'll click OK. And up here, so if I turn that leaf off, that's, you know, the leaf there. And so the remaining vector is the grain, right? So I'll rename that to the grain. Okay. So now I should have my main vine kind of outline, right? And it's also got a little bit of the leaf outline and stuff in it as well, and that's fine. I have the grapes, I have the grain, and I have the leaf vector. Okay? So now everything is nice and separated for me. Now I'm going to delete layer 1 because it's not going to be an active layer for me. And if we look, there's something right down here on this leaf vector, and if I turn on the grain, it's that guy right there. He's part of the grain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select him, and I'm going to move him or it to the grain layer and make sure that I didn't miss anything else, right? I didn't. Okay. Now let's go back and look at this photo again. And if you remember, I said the grain was in this little area right here where you could see the vine running through this leaf. So if we look at this, that grain right there, this leaf kind of overlaps it, and this is an opening in that leaf. All of these little loops right here are kind of openings. And so basically it's giving the illusion that you can see the vine running, under that leaf. Okay, on that vector right there. So that vine is running under that leaf. So that's why in that loop there, that's why that grain vector here, that I have that there. Now let's go ahead and separate some colors. So on the grain, what I'm going to do is I'll make that kind of a brown color. And then the leaf, I'll make that kind of a green. That's not green. Where's green at? Green color. And so if I turn all of the layers back on, on my red vine, let's make that kind of a charcoal. Let's see, something that stands out. What stands out from everything else that I have here? Nope, we can barely see that. Black. Yeah, we'll leave it black. But we can now see the image in a much less complicated manner by being able to turn off vectors and hide them, right? And this will allow us to kind of redraw the vectors that we're creating. Okay, cool. Awesome. Now, where to start, right? Where to start with our shapes and everything. Because what we're going to end up doing, and let's go back to this image for reference here, is the main vine that kind of wraps around in this circular shape, and ends up into the leaf vein. This main vine, that's going to be one vector. And then that main vine, it kind of continues on and then it wraps around itself here. Well, I'm going to need to be able to create new vectors for this wrapping motion here and everything. So I'm going to be creating different models on these shapes to make, and they're going to be merged together to create that one organic shape, if you will. But there's different thicknesses to the vine. It goes from that thicker to thinner area, and then it widens out into the vein. But, there's different thicknesses. So we're going to use those different size cross sections to create this shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize my imagination, and I'm going to take these vectors and redraw them, utilizing some of these vectors to help me to kind of recreate this shape as I see it here. So we are in the vine layer, so let's make it active. But what I want to do is I want to kind of keep it intact. Okay, kind of as my profile, if you will. When I'm drawing or cutting up things or node editing and stuff, I like to do that on its own layer so that I can delete what I need to delete, keep what I need to keep, and I'm not losing anything from my original. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to select it and we're going to copy that this time, copy, not move, to a new layer, and I'm going to call this my trim or redraw or revise layer, whatever you want. I'll just call it trim and redraw. I'll call it trim and redraw, which is not a very creative name, but it lets me know kind of what it is. And I will make this a red color because red to me stands out from what I'm working on, so that I can see what it is. Now I'm going to turn off the vine layer and make sure that the trim and redraw layer is active by selecting on it. I should be able to see the name up here, and it should be highlighted in black bold. That means it's the active layer that I'm working on. And now I can come in and kind of do some cutting and redrawing. Well, the first thing is this little branch of this vine here, I want to separate it from the main vine. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my arc tool, if you will, and here I'm going to snap there for my first part of my arc. I'm going to come probably somewhere right about here for the second part of the arc, and I'm going to kind of create this little curve. Now in node editing, I'm going to take, and where I intersected that arc, I'm going to cut the vector. And then down here where I created the arc, I'm also going to cut the vector there. And basically by doing that, what I've done is I've separated this from the main body. And I'm going to take this and that arc that I drew, and I'm going to join that as one closed vector. I'm going to join those two open vectors as one. So now it is by itself, and I could move it wherever I want, right? Well, I don't want to move it. I want to leave it there. Okay. Now, on this vector here, I'm actually going to join the two ends that I cut free with a straight line. I'm going to close it off with a straight line. So I'm going to go into the Join with Straight Line tool and connect that. Okay. Now, since this vector that I just separated is separate from that, I'm going to use that kind of as a boundary. Okay. So if I take this vector here and I select it first, and then I select this vector last, I can use my regular trim tool to clear inside that boundary. That boundary is this last piece that I selected. And if I do that, if I clear that, it should redraw this vector around that layer. But it doesn't. And that's what kills me. What it actually did was it literally redrew the vector around the whole thing and recreated that shape again. Right? And that's fine. That means that the trim tool is not going to be the tool that I'm going to use in this case. But if I wanted to create individual components and have them overlay each other, that would be the perfect tool for it, because now I have a vector I can create a shape on, and it's laying exactly on its template right where it should, you know, right over that. But I kind of want to separate these components, right? So I'm going to undo that straight line tool, and I'm just going to go into node editing, and on this line here that was connected, I'm just going to turn that into an arc, and I'm going to pull that arc down so it overlaps here. Okay. So now if I go out of node editing mode and I move this vine out of the way, I've got this shape that was kind of recreated where this goes into place. Okay. So the trim tool wasn't quite the tool that I wanted. It did create a nice effect that if I was using this like a puzzle, right? If I was making a puzzle where all these pieces fit on top, great. But I needed to kind of create this closed vector between these 2 points here, and I needed it to wrap around the vector that I created earlier. So that way I have, you know, 2 separate parts. All right, so now that we have that, let's I'm going to work down here first, and then I'll work my way around to the top. So down here I have a vector. I'm recreating the vine, right? So I need to connect this line with this line, and then ultimately this line with this one down here, and I need to recreate these vectors all the way around. So I'm going to go into node editing, and right here I'm going to cut the vector, and then down here I'm going to cut the vector. Down here at the other end, right up here actually where it starts to turn, I'm going to cut the vector there, and then down here again I'm going to cut the vector. Working my way around in node editing, here I'm going to, probably before it starts to turn right there, I'll cut the vector here. Up here, following the line all the way around to its natural path. I'm going to cut the vector there, all the way up to here, cut it there, and then around. We'll cut it there, and over to here. Now I'm going to stop there so we can start to connect these lines so you can see what in the world it is that I'm doing. So if I come in and let's go into this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the vector up here as well. All right, so let's get out of node editing mode, and now I have this line here that I need to join to this line. So I'm going to select both of them, and I'm going to join with a smooth curve. It's going to create that natural curve there. Now I'm going to come down here and have this vector that's joined together. I'm going to select this one and join that with a smooth curve. Kind of continue around. Over here, I'm going to select this vector and join that with a smooth curve all the way around to this vector that I'm going to join with a smooth curve. Okay, so I'm basically creating that vector line all the way around, and I'm going to continue until this vine is redrawn and it's its own vector, right? All right, so now I've got the outside of this line here. Great. I need the inside as well. Okay, so here I'm going to go back into node editing mode, and somewhere probably right about here we'll cut the vector. Down here, before it starts to turn the corner, on the straightaway we'll cut the vector there. Down here, we'll kind of before it starts turning the corner, right about here, we'll cut the vector. We've got to think about the vine, you know, how it grows and stuff, but you'll see what I'm going to do with this once I get all of these things connected. Coming around on that line, I'll cut the vector here, up to here, cut it there, and back to where I started from. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and delete this span right there. Okay, so now I have these individual vectors that I need to again join together, and I'm going to join them with this one. Now this one travels all the way up here and it starts to go into the shape of the leaf. I'm going to go ahead and cut it from the leaf right there. So now, getting out of node editing mode, this vector is going to continue around. I'm going to select this line and join with a smooth curve. I've got to clean that up. You see how it made a kind of a big bulge there? I don't want that. We'll fix that in a minute. Coming down to here, it's going to join with a smooth curve. Up to here, it's going to join with a smooth curve. And then over to here, it's going to join with a smooth curve. Okay. Now, we will go back and clean this up in just a minute. We'll smooth out these lines a little bit more to make them more natural and round and everything and smooth here in a moment, but we're pretty good where we are. Now, on this here, this line actually continues around and it goes to here, and then that continues around and goes to here, so on and so forth. Let's go back to the outside line and continue working our path around to do the outside, then we'll come back and do the inside. And again, hopefully this is not too boring for you, but you know, we'll come in here. Now I've already saved this project called Model Challenge. I'm just going to hit the save button to save. Thank you for that, Famunda Cheese. Thanks for a reminder about saving. But let's go ahead and go back into node editing mode. And let's come in here, and right about where it straightens out, I'm going to cut the vector here. Cut it there. Coming down to here, we'll cut it right here on the corner. That line comes around. We'll cut it here. And then back up to here. We'll cut it here. Okay. And then ultimately, we'll cut it here. And then over here, that's already cut. That's already an endpoint. So we're going to come up to here. Now this vine actually comes and it literally connects to this small little section right here before it wraps around to this line. So in node editing, I'm going to go ahead and cut the vector here and here, and then come over here and cut it here. All right, let's go ahead and get things connected so we don't lose track of where we are. Let's go out of node editing mode, and this line connects to this line. I'm going to join with a smooth curve. Again, a little bit of a bulge. I'll have to fix that when everything is all said and done and I have one complete separate vector. Then I'll go in, I'll smooth these things out. That is going to connect to here, so we'll join that with a smooth curve. It comes around and it joins to here with a smooth curve, and then to here, join with a smooth curve, around to this, believe it or not, this little line, not this little line here, join with a smooth curve, and then over to here, join with a smooth curve. Okay, so basically I'm recreating a profile on this that we're going to be able to use, and eventually I'm going to end up creating a center line from these vectors, which you'll see in a moment. All right, so now we've got the outside vector that goes all the way to here, and then it needs to connect up to there, and then finally it ends right here at this little point. So from here, let's go back into node editing mode, and let's cut the vector here. That line shoots up to this line. That's already a cut vector, so we're good there. We need to cut the vector here, and then up here where it comes into this point, I'm going to go right into the straightaway here and cut it there, and then ultimately I might as well do it on the other side as well, because we're going to then be joining our inside lines in just a moment. All right, now luckily, fortunately, we don't have a lot of this to do. We've got, a very simple one up here to do where it just overlaps, and then we cut this one free just like we cut this one free. So we don't have a whole lot to do, of this. So once we get this little loop done, then, we'll be good to go. All right, so not losing track, our inside line here, this is going to connect to here. So I need to cut the vector there. It wraps around, cut it here. And I'm not getting rid of this line here because this line is going to join to my main vine that goes all the way around in that circular shape and stuff. So that stays there where it is. So this comes in here. This vector, we're going to cut the vector here. It comes around to here, cut it. All the way over to here, cut it around to here, cut up to this one. Now remember, I've already cut this loose, so this line is already by itself here, and that's fine. I just need to go up to this side here and cut it there, and then that is ultimately going to connect to this. So let's go ahead and connect those vectors. So on our inside vector, we've already got this loop that comes around, right? So it connects to here. We're going to join with a smooth curve. Again, I'll have to fix that. I want it to be a more smoother. But it goes from here to this, join with a smooth curve, over to here, join with a smooth curve. Now notice how it jumped from there to there. It went the wrong direction because it's trying to find the shortest path. I can't have that. No matter what I do, it's always going to do that. So I actually have to kind of connect this myself with a curve that I think is suitable. So in this case, I'm going to use an arc, and I'm going to click here, and click here, and I'm going to just pull that arc into what I think would be natural curve of that. And then because it's just two separate lines, I need to join them together as one vector, those two vectors selected as one. And then I can kind of come back in here and, you know, start to connect. So join that as one. And then once again, this will connect to here. Join with a smooth curve. Funky looking curve. Definitely going to have to fix that because that's not what that vine does, but I'm okay with that for right now. And I need to make sure that I joined to the wrong line. Control undo. That line needs to join to this line. Laney, pay attention. Join with a smooth curve. There we go. Still got to fix this, a little funky. And then that is going to connect to this. Join with a smooth curve. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get the outside line finished up. That connects to here. Join with a smooth curve. And then it connects to here. Join with a smooth curve. So now I have this vector loop here that, again, if I were to, move it, it's by itself, right? I've kind of taken that loop out of there. Let's put it back for right now. Now, you've seen what we're doing here, where I'm kind of creating the different sections, and now I've got to kind of connect all of my little segments here. I got to connect all them together, to make this one continuous vine here, separating these elements. But before I do, let's go into here and let's move it out of the way for a minute. I know where it connects. It connects right there, so that's good. But let's go into node editing and clean up some of these vectors. So that big bulge that was there, I don't want that bulge to be there. And I also don't want, kind of this zigzag here. So I'm just going to pull this out a little bit. And I just want it to kind of go into that. That curve stays. That's where that other branch goes into. So I want a nice kind of smooth flow here to the best of our ability. And when it gets into this funky line right here, let's get rid of that bulge. And let's pull this point down. And then here, all right, now from here coming around, I really don't need all of these nodes that are creating, these black nodes that are creating kind of jagged lines. So I'm going to actually start deleting these points. And when I do, it should start helping me kind of clean up those vectors a bit. And now I can create my curve to where it's a little bit smoother coming around that edge. There's a lot of nodes here to deal with, and I'm going to show you how we can clean them up in just a moment. But let's come around here. While we're here, we've got this kind of jagged jaunt right here. I'm going to fix that. Let's see here. Let's bring this down a bit. And I'm going to get rid of this point right here. And let's pull this down a bit so we have a little bit more of a turn. Now there's a lot of jagged areas here, there. I'm not going to try to fix all of them here. I'll use a different tool for that. But I do want to clean up some of the main problems, right? So let's delete this point and pull this down. Kind of just smoothing some things out. Now this comes around to here and it kind of flattens off, and that's not what I want. So I've got to be mindful what points are what. So I'm going to delete this point as well as this one. And that should allow me to create a little bit more natural curve. Might be too much of a curve. We'll figure it out in a minute. That comes around here. And again, it's really stiff right here. Let's kind of look at that. And the two black nodes, they're non-smoothing nodes. That means, you know, I could turn smoothing on to soften them up, you know, to, you know, kind of soften things up and stuff. But what I really want to do is try to eliminate as many nodes as possible. So I'm actually just going to delete those points. And now I have from this point all the way up to this point, I have one curve that I can just kind of, you know, create kind of that natural flow. Now over here on the inside, it's done this funky little jog right here. We need to go ahead and clean that up. And when it comes in, it came in and it was kind of joining in and then back. Well, I want to delete this point to get rid of that. And I'd like it to be just a little bit more of a natural curve coming in there. And again, it's not pretty right now. It's not meant to be. It's just meant to be kind of cleaning up, you know, these hooks and things, you know, just kind of cleaning things up a bit. All right, let's go ahead, and now that we have that, let's go ahead and move that back. I'm going to grab it right on the end of this line right here, and I'm going to snap it right back into place there where it belongs. And, you know, I've got kind of my, you know, a little bit cleaner curve. I could probably go into node editing and I could probably pull this one out a little bit more, get a little bit more roundness to it. Now notice as I'm pulling that, it's not really, it's, you know, this point is really causing a problem. So I'm actually going to delete that point, and then I can pull my curve from these 2 points to kind of smooth them out. And I didn't smooth them at all. I created this flat point here. So let me pull this back a little bit. There we go. I'll be okay with that. I could chase these curves for days, and I'm not going to. We're not going to waste that kind of time. You know, I could chase these points for days and everything. But what I can do is to eliminate some of those points and try to smooth them out myself, or itself, is I can use what's called the Curve Fit tool. The Curve Fit tool basically redraws a curve or a vector, kind of, you know, smoothing it out, fitting the new vector to the old, based on if I want circular arcs or Bezier curves or straight lines, and also my tolerance. So looking at this, if we zoom into this here, if I come in and say, okay, I want Bezier curves, I'll have a tolerance of about 0.010 of an inch. I could preview this, and it'll go through and kind of smooth out and get rid of a lot of those nodes and points and all. You know, it'll smooth them out. Let's zoom in and see exactly what it did. If I do Control Z to undo, kind of focusing on, you know, these points down here, what, if I redo that, Control Y, what, Control Z, Control Y, Control Z, Control Y. The only thing it did really is it just kind of changed the shape. Watch how this one in the middle here, Control Z, Control Y, all it did is kind of smooth it out. Now, what if I said, okay, that's fine. Let's do it again. Let's come in here and another 0.010 of an inch tolerance. Preview that. It's smoothing it out even more. I'm going to click OK to lock that in. I'm going to open up that tool one more time, and I'm going to do it again. And each time I do that, it's smoothing those lines more and more and more, and removing those points, kind of reducing them from what they were to what they are now. It's kind of, you know, smoothing it out ever so more. I don't want to change my tolerance too much, but you know, I can keep basically, if I change my tolerance too much, let's say I go 50 thousandths of an inch, you know, now I'm making straight lines, right? I'm not making natural curves. So I'm going to undo that, you know, and I want to make sure that, you know, my tolerance is low. 10 thousandths is the highest I'll go on this tool, but that's all I need. I don't need any more smoother than that. So it's fine for what it is. Okay. All right. So with that, what we can do is I can go ahead and I'm going to move it out of the way. Again, I know where it snaps to up here. And I'm going to start connecting these vectors together here to create this vine. Okay. Hopefully that, again, hopefully this isn't too boring for you. But if we look where these vines were overlapping and all, my lines here kind of have these curves up, right? You know, on the ends. And they don't curve up, they connect together in one fell swoop. Now I have a choice here. I can go into node editing and I can start to, let's hit out of that tool. I can go into node editing and I can, you know, kind of delete the span, you know, to get rid of it, and, you know, delete this span to kind of get rid of that, so I can connect these two together with a, you know, a smooth curve. I can do all these things. Or it may just be simpler for me to take the curve tool and snap from here to here up to here, space bar to finish to kind of create that curve, and then go into node editing mode on that curve and pull it into its shape, right? The shape that it doesn't have to be perfectly exactly the same. I could have it exactly the same. I could have it, you know, follow that curve exactly the same. But that, connecting that will be a lot easier for me doing it that way. So now I can go in and on those vectors, I can just delete them, right? I can go in and delete those because I've recreated that whole span, if you will, right? From there to there. Now, it is still separate. It's not connected to the rest of this yet. Not until I select this end and this end. And I come over to the join tool and I have 3 individual vectors selected. I'm going to join them as one. So now it is one vector. We're going to end up cutting the vector in node editing mode, because this vine here is separate. Again, we got to redraw this vine. Right now, my main goal is creating a path all the way around back down to here, right? To where this connects in. You guys and girls with me still? Wonderful. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. No sense in wasting time. I'm going to use the curve tool. I'm going to snap to the end of this line here. I'm going to come somewhere in the middle and click, and then up here at the top, I'm going to click as well. Let it start shaping that curve. I'll use my space bar to finish, or right click, either one. And I'll go into node editing mode. And I'll pull that curve into shape. And this vine, I'm recreating it basically, so it can pretty much be whatever I want it to be. You know? It does not have to be exactly perfect. And so now that I've got that shape recreated, I'll just go in and select the vectors and delete them. And up here, I will trim that away. Now when I trim that, that joined that vector all the way around. So if I look at the join tool, it is one closed vector, right? It closed it up. That's great. That's what I want. Now, of course, I don't want it out here. It connects straight across through these connections, right? Okay. So we will go through and clean that up. On the inside, this inside line comes along and connects to in here. All right. Now, this is why I said that, this may be more than a one class project, because we have yet to build any model components. We are still creating the vectors so that we can create those model components. So stick with me. We're going to get through this. Let's go ahead, and now that I've connected this and everything, I'm going to put this vine back where it belongs and get it in place. Okay. And yes, I have overlapping lines and I have all of this, and that's fine because we're not actually using these lines to create our shapes. We're going to end up using a center line to create our little vine loop. Okay, cool. All right, let's go up into here and let's start kind of cleaning things up. We're going to go into node editing mode and we're going to cut the vector here over to this little segment here. I'm going to actually delete that span. I'll delete, let's try that again. Delete the span, there we go. And then up here, we'll cut the vector. And then that vine travels all the way to here. I'm going to just delete this span. It comes to here, cut the vector, over to here, cut the vector, and over to here. Okay, and then ultimately to here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and join these lines together to create that, and then I'm going to change my, I'm going to go do the inside line, and then I'm going to change. While I'm here, I'm working my way up. So while I'm here, I'm going to connect these vectors how they should be connected to create that little loop and all here. So let's go ahead and finish connecting these. This outside line connects to this line here. Join with a smooth curve. It connects to this line here. Join with a smooth curve. Comes around and connects to this vector here, join with a smooth curve, all the way to here, join with a smooth curve. Okay, again, have to clean that up a little bit, but it's fine for now. Now, alternatively, what is another option that I could do for this? Well, I could come up here for, let's look at the inside line now. Go into node editing and let's cut the vector here. And then come down to where this vector ends, which is right here. Cut the vector there. And I could, again, use my curve tool, draw a curve tool, and I could draw a curve from here. Somewhere in the middle, I'll click right about there and then connect over to that. Space bar to finish, and in node editing I can come in and kind of change up whatever I want to change up. Zoom in, let's pull this down just a little bit. All the way around to there. Now by doing that, I can take this vector, and this vector, join those three selected vectors into one open vector. So now it's one continuous open vector there. And again, this comes around, and I'm going to go ahead while I'm here in node editing mode, and I'm going to cut it free from this leaf vine. We'll cut that there. So that way, this and this. All right, you see where it joined? It actually joined here with this jagged line, right? And I don't want that. I need it to join there. So I do have to go into node editing mode, and I'm simply going to delete this span right here. And then I should be able to select that and this and join it together to clean that up. So that should be one continuous line all the way down to here. Now, speaking of down here, might as well cut that free so I can keep track of my vine, right? All right. Now, up here, if this line comes around and connects, let's go ahead and I'm going to fix this a little bit more. Pull that up to there. If that comes around to there, then this vector must be the vine that comes around and all to here. So let's go ahead and focus on that. Again, node editing. I'm going to cut the vector here. This line comes around and into here. And this line comes around. It V's out. And then that connects to here. So let's cut the vector there. And I should be able to, I'm actually going to delete this little span. That's going to help me make sure that when I join these two lines with a smooth curve, that it draws it around and connects it to the right node. Again, I don't want that curve looking that funky, so let's smooth it out a bit. And I'm deleting points where I don't need them. Okay, now this vine comes around, okay, and right here we're going to cut the vector and it connects to this point. This is where it ends. So this point here is already, you know, by itself. Let me put that back. So I should be able to take this line here, select this here, and join with a smooth curve to connect that. Not the prettiest curve, so let's go ahead and kind of make it a little bit more subtle. All right. Now this comes around here and it connects to this. This is my inside vector here, but you see how it jogs off into no man's land? I don't want that. I'm actually going to delete that span and this little span right here. We'll delete that. And let's go into node editing and cut the vector here and over here. And that one's already by itself. All right, now this inside line, that inside line represents this vine that I created earlier. Don't need it no more. Hit delete, get rid of it. Okay. This vector connects to this vector with a smooth curve. Again, we'll fix that curve in a moment. But then it comes around and connects to this with a smooth curve. And you see how it created that section right there? Boom. It created a smooth curve at the shortest distance, right? That's not what I want. That actually connects to here. So what I'm going to do is, let's go into node editing and cut this vector here. Again, we'll delete this one. We don't need it. So let's join this first. This line and this line will join with a smooth curve. And you see how it jumped over there. Not what I want, right? Undo that. So I have to manually come in and use my curve tool. I'm just going to use the arc tool for this and connect from here. Oops. Let's try that again. Use the arc tool, connect from here to here, and kind of pull a small arc out just to create that. And then same thing from here to here. Pull an arc out, create that. And then of course, just because I put the arc there doesn't mean it's a joined together vector. So I'm going to select this, 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 and this, and join those 4 vectors as one. Okay, so they're connected. Now, this vine here comes out of the leaf. If we look at the picture again, this vine, this is the one that we're creating here, right? The leaf overlaps it. And that vine, most likely, it's hidden, but most likely this vine comes from a little branch somewhere up here, and it kind of is looping around itself because this top part comes down into here, and then out of here it comes over to there. So this has got to come from somewhere. So most likely it's branching off, wrapping around and connecting there, somewhere in there. But the leaf overlaps that, so we have to kind of create our illusion. So basically I'm just going to close this off as one vector. Just this little piece of vine right there is going to be one closed vector by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the vector here, and I'm going to cut it probably right about here, and I'm going to take this and this and join with a smooth curve, and it didn't join the correct end, so I got to finish off this vine before I can connect these 2 points. So let's come over here, go into node editing, cut it there. Might as well cut it here while I'm there. And this line in between, I can just go ahead and delete that because it's this line right here that we recreated. This guy here, let's go ahead and cut it there and there. And again, this bottom part, we'll delete that because again, that's represented by this line right here. All right, over here, let's take this and join with a smooth curve. Join with a smooth curve. That to that, join with a smooth curve. Wrong curve. All right, it's not going to join these two together like I want. So let's go from here to here and see if it joins properly. Nope. So then I need to use I'm going to use my arc tool again and just connect from there to there. Kind of just get a subtle arc there. And then from here to here, subtle arc there. And then this part here, when it wraps around, it actually loops around and it comes into a point here. If we look at the picture on that top part, or that lower part, it actually dead ends right into the vine right here. This is the part that we're creating right now. Okay, so it wraps over and it just dead ends into that. And so if it were to wrap over, it just dead ends. So that means this line that I created earlier needs to actually connect over here. So I'm going to go back into node editing mode. I'm going to cut the vector. I'm actually going to just delete this span. And this line should join with this one. I'm going to cut this back in the straightaway a little bit and delete that. And let's go with an arc from here to here. Create kind of that natural curve. And then this one, I'm going to come into this a little bit. And then I'll end up joining. I'm going to extend this line to this line. Okay. And let's go ahead and start joining some things up. I'll just select that, my arc, this, and that. Go into the join tool. Those 6 vectors are going to be joined into one. That's great. That's one loop now. This one here, let's zoom in. That, all the way around to here is 2 to here. Join that as 1. Over here, I'm going to just join these 2 with a straight line to join those 2 ends, because it'll just dead end into there. And then finally, I can join this last thing with a smooth curve to create that smooth curve. And it didn't necessarily need to be a smooth curve like that. If I go into node editing mode, you know, this can actually be pulled down a little bit, such as that. Okay, so now what I have is, again, I have another complete shape that if I pulled it off, you know, it's by itself. Okay. Okay, so that's by itself. This is a complete shape. This guy is a complete shape by himself. You know, all of those things. Okay, cool. All right, now this vine wraps around to here and it ultimately ends up connecting to here. Okay, all right. Mike, you have a great evening, sir. Thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and finish our work up here. Go back into node editing. We're going to cut the vector here. Over here. Down to here. And then ultimately that will end up connecting to there. This line here will ultimately end up connecting to this line here. So I'm going to delete this span. Oops. Let's try that again. Delete the span. There we go. And I'm going to cut the vector there. Okay. And now I realize where this vine over here is coming from. It's actually coming from, if there was an imaginary line, it's coming all the way over and connecting to there, and that's where it ends. Okay, underneath the leaf. So it doesn't come from up here. It actually comes from this loop. This loop comes down and connects here. This one comes down and connects to there. Cool. All right, and this vector here is part of my leaf outline, which I'm trying not to delete those. I want to keep those in because I want to do something with them in just a moment. But let's go ahead and join this line to here, join with a smooth curve. Again, we'll have to fix that. Every once in a while we get that jog in there, and that's okay. And then ultimately, this one is going to come in and connect to the inside line over here. So I might as well, I'm just going to use an arc because it's going to be hidden by the leaves and everything, but I am going to go ahead and connect it And an arc is not going to be the best option for that. It's going to be a Bezier curve. So let's actually change that. Let's go into node editing, change that to a Bezier curve, and let's kind of get that flow going in there. You know, where it connects. All right, notice I didn't connect to my line there. Now I'm connected to my line. Well, we got a nice smooth curve that looks a little bit more natural. All right, this outside line here, we're going to cut the vector. Over to here. I'm going to cut it on this straightaway. And then I'm going to delete this span that's in the middle, those two cuts that I just made. That comes down to here. There's a point there, and that's going to be a point of the leaf. So I'm going to cut the vector there. I'm going to cut it on the other side of that point. And then I'm going to cut it here. And so if we go ahead and join that, oops, did I not cut that? Bear with me a second. I think I did. Let me look in node editing. Yeah, I did. All right, so if I join that to this, join with a smooth curve, it'll connect, but it makes a funky curve. Let's fix that. There we go. That ultimately connects to this, join with a smooth curve. All right, it just joined with a smooth curve, but where? The question is, where did it join? All right, let's do that again. There we go. And then ultimately, I'll use the curve tool this time. And I'll just connect here. We'll go out here, in, and then it ultimately will connect to there. So spacebar to finish. Let's go into node editing mode, and let's move that node over where it belongs. Let's pull this in a little bit. That vine is not that thick. Okay. A little thick here. Let's pull that in a little bit. Okay. So now, coming in here, if I connect this, notice how if I select this here, let's go into node editing. What I want to do is on this, I'm literally just going to zoom in and I'm going to delete that little span so that it separates this line a bit, because I know that connects over to here. I can even come in here and delete this little span, and let's actually cut it back here on this straightaway, because that's going to connect there and this is going to connect there, all that wonderful jazz. So this tool here needs to connect here, or this line, not tool, this curve. Notice how there's a little jog out there. I didn't connect very well to the end of that line, so let's go into node editing mode and pull, not that vector, or not that node, this node, and snap it down where it belongs. Okay, so that and that join as one to this, join as one, and inside line that joins to this. Okay, so this comes around to that loop and it dead ends there. Wonderful. This, all right, it won't let me join there. Not yet. All right, let's go up here and cut the vector right here and here. This and this will join with a smooth curve. This and this will join with a smooth curve. And then, of course, I'm working my way around. Okay, on this little leaf outline here, I'm going to go into node editing mode on that. And I'm going to cut the vector here, and I'm just going to delete this little span to separate those things. So I know that's separate. This little leaf is fine. It'll end up connecting to that in a moment. Might as well, let's do that now. We're going to join that with a straight line. Straight line. Join this and this with a straight line. Come across. That'll be that leaf outline in a moment. We'll fix that in a minute, but that's what it is. All right. Coming up around here underneath the grapes, this vine connects to here. So we're almost there, guys and girls. We're going to cut the vector. Down here, we'll cut the vector here. And I can't really join this with a smooth curve because if I try to join that and that with a smooth curve, it's not going to create the curve where I want it. It's going to create it over here. And I don't want that. So I gotta create my curve manually. So from here to here. And I know it looks funky. It's not really organic, but we'll clean it up in a moment. That's going to end up connecting this, oh, hold the shift key. This, and this will be connected. And looking at where I snapped here, if I go into node editing mode, this line did not connect to where I cut it, which should snap to there. And now that's one continuous vector. Let's go into node editing mode. Might as well turn this into a Bezier curve. And let's give this curve some curve appeal. It's kind of hidden by the grapes. So it's going to kind of flow like that. That's how I envision this inside of this vector curling. This one here, a lot of nodes. We're going to, where's the grapes start? They start right about here. So we're going to cut the vector right here. And the grapes end right about up here. So we'll cut the vector there. And these two lines from here to here, let's get out of node editing mode. From here to here, If I join them with a smooth curve, again, it's doing it up here, right? In the wrong direction. That's not what I want. So let's go in. I'll do a Bezier curve this time. We'll snap to there. Let's pick a spot right about here. Here. And end up there. Space bar to finish. Let's give this a little bit of a curve appeal. And since this is hidden by the grapes, I can kind of make it look pretty much any way that I want. Because when the grapes models are created, you're not going to see it. So we'll call that good. All right. This vine here, I'm not going to try to, to connect it to anything. It just simply gets cut. Here and here, and that will get joined with a smooth curve just to close it off, because it's going to be its own component. And again, it's going to blend in with the model, so I really don't care what the end looks like. That'll be that. All right, so this will join to here. As one. That comes up. This, if I were to draw this all the way out, this actually connects to this vine here. Right? But since the leaf is going to, this goes into the leaf vein. That's right, it does go into the leaf vein. So then that means that this vine that I thought, it does come somewhere from in here. It doesn't come to there. That goes into the leaf vein. So knowing that, these two vectors here will get joined with a straight line just to close it off. Okay. And then finally, not finally, but I need to cut the vector here, 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 here. That line is going to continue all the way around to here. Cut, cut. And it ends at this point up here. Lainey, what is the point of all this? Well, there is actually a point. It will make sense when we get everything drawn and stuff, but we need this to create we have to have closed vectors to create our model shapes, depending on how we're going to approach those. And so this line and this line will be joined with a smooth curve. This line and this line. Let me delete this span real quick. And I'm going to cut it back here where it starts to straight away. Get rid of that. This line connects to this line. Hold the shift key with a smooth curve. Ah. All right, so on this one I've got to, let's try that again. from there to there, smooth curve. Still wanting to go the wrong direction, so I'll use the arc tool. Snap from there to there. So that, and this will be joined as one vector. Over to here, let's go into node editing mode. Hit the letter N on the keyboard for node editing. Cut the vector there. I'm going to go ahead and delete this span. That will connect somewhere right about here. And this little twisty little vine that's all by itself is growing out of the main vine. So these two things here join that, and this as one. Up to here. This and this join with a smooth curve. We'll fix that curve in a minute. To here, join with a smooth curve. Yeah, we'll fix that end in a second. That comes around to here. So in node editing, I got to cut the vector here. Now I'm actually going to delete these two spans. I'm going to delete this one and this one. So that way I can create this loop here. So with the arc tool, this loop will actually connect to there. It'll come around and connect from here to here. And in node editing, let's make sure that this vector is cut here. And let's delete this span. All right, so that comes around, and then this one, I'm going to delete this span. This will connect to here. Join with a smooth curve. Cut that vector there. This, let me pull this back. This joins over here. So this and this will join with a smooth curve. And let's fix that curve while we're here. Okay, so I've got to cut that and snap that to there. Okay, let's fix this. Not the most organic shape in the world, but it'll do. All right, that comes around. This connects to here. Then it connects to here. Go into node editing. We're almost there, guys. I'm I'm going to delete this span right here. This is like watching water boil, isn't it? Boring as all be it. We'll try to make it more interesting here in just a minute. All right, this line, I'm going to go ahead and delete this span. And I'm going to cut this vector back here. Okay. Let's delete this span. Okay. So this vector here and this vector, let me delete that, and that. All right, one more time. That to that, join with a smooth curve. Let's fix the curve. It comes around this and this. If I try to join this with a smooth curve, it's not going to do it. It's going to jump to the shortest distance, which is there. That's not correct, so I got to use the arc tool. Let's try that arc tool one more time. Why are you clicking way out there? One more time. There we go. Join that. This connects to this with a smooth curve. That should draw the curve properly. A little crooked, but it drew it. That ends up connecting to this. That was wrong. Control Z to undo. That ends up connecting to this with a straight line, because that's growing out of that vine. This ends up connecting to this with a smooth curve. And again, I don't care what this end looks like in this piece because it grows into this and it'll blend when we create the model. So I don't care what that shape looks like right there. All right, last one. From here to here, join with a smooth curve. That joined somewhere else that it shouldn't have. So I got to use the arc tool again from here to there. All right, this, and this are joined as one. Almost there. This and this join as one. And then this and this should close off that vector. So now I have one closed vector. Again, if I move that vine, that's that piece. All of that just for that. Wonderful. Great. Awesome. Now up here, this comes down and dead ends there. That's great. And then this one comes down and connects to here. This needs to connect here, but it's not on the right line. So let's go to node editing mode. I'm going to delete this span, and this guy needs to come over and connect to this one. Let's get rid of this line here. Well, actually, I don't need to. So I could join that as it's showing as one open vector. Because, let's see here, that can get deleted. This should be one closed vector, even though the lines overlap one another. But there's a big gap right here. That's why it's open. So join with a smooth curve. And now it should be closed. Good. Okay. So if I were to take this closed vector here and move it to the side, we have this, right? This shape. Okay. We have this vine here that's going to be under the leaf. It's by itself. Wonderful. This guy is by himself. Wonderful. This one by himself. And all that I'm left with are these inside vectors that kind of create the outline of the grapes and stuff. And I'm going to keep them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them. I'm going to get them out of here. So I'm going to select that, this, this, this. I need to clean that up right there. But let's take this and this. All of these vectors that aren't my vine. And I'm going to move them to a new layer. And I'm just going to call this my leaf and grape. Leaf and grapes outline. Because we're going to end up connecting those. But first of all, I got to fix this right up here. Last step, cut the vector there. Come over here and cut the vector here. Take this and move that to that leaf and grapevine outlet layer. And then I need to join this with a smooth curve. And again, that's going to be under the leaf, so I really don't care what it looks like. All right, so now we have all these individual vectors here. Now we can start modeling. All right, how many fell off and how many are still watching? Wake up, because that was boring. I know it was for you, but that's the part of modeling in the process, okay? We just got to deal with it, right? We got to do it. These shapes here, these ones that are standing alone by themselves, I should be able to just create a shape from them using the regular create shape tool, because they don't curl on themselves, they don't overlap anything, there's no weave part of it or anything like that. So these three shapes, and it should create some nice looking shapes using that create shape tool. So let's go ahead and start kind of modeling some things. Let's create these three shapes. And our modeling tool, I'm going to use the create shape tool. I want a curved shape here. I'm going to go with probably about a 70-degree curve. No limit. And I'm going to click apply. All right, let's look at our 3D view at those three shapes that were created. Okay, and that's going to be fine because at some point I'm most likely going to add some texturing into these model shapes with that grain. Okay, all right, so we've got these. That's the first start of our model, right? So this component will be our little I'll just call it vine ends, right? It's the ends of the vine. We'll click apply and close that tool for a minute. All right, so we've got those three shapes done. Now, on our little curly Q up here, if I tried to use the create shape tool on this, same kind of parameters and everything, and I click apply, I don't think I'm going to get a very good weave, right? Where it's looping. You see what happens is where those overlaps are, let me get back to that, it cuts off the model. It doesn't create the shape there, right? So I need to create that kind of weave effect. So we're going to, of course, reset that, undo that. And it's not going to be the create shape tool that we're going to be using. It's going to be the center rail sweep tool that has that weave feature in it. But on this center rail sweep tool, I can basically sweep a shape between two spans. And it's going, instead of doing it between two spans and having two separate shapes kind of overlap each other, I'm going to create a center line. So what I need to do is I'm going to take my draw curve tool, and I'm literally going to draw this little loop-de-loop. So let's do it in a different layer so we can see a different color. I'm going to just create a new layer, and on this layer I'm going to call it my center lines. Rename. Oops. Center lines for modeling, right? Whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to make sure that layer is active, and it's going to be black. My other layer is red, right? So we should be able to see that black line over that red pretty well. If not, we'll change the color. But on my curve tool, I'm going to start here basically, and I'm just going to literally click in here. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly at the center, because remember, we are remodeling this, right? We want to get close to center the best that we can, but it doesn't have to be dead center because we're creating our own models. Okay, space bar to finish. Now I do want to clean it up some. So I will go into node editing mode here, and I'm going to kind of make it a little bit more curvy. And I'm going to try my best to, you know, get it somewhat centered, right? All right, so that's coming around, traveling around up here. Let's get this, give this a little bit more of a curve. All right, coming around. Over to here. Let's pull this into the center a little bit more. Again, I'm eyeballing what I think is the center of this vine. And I'm happy with that. Okay, so that vector is going to be, I'm not happy with this, but though, hold on one second. Okay. So that center line is going to be what I'm creating the shape on. Ooh. All right. Sorry, I froze up there for a minute. That center line is what I'm going to be creating the shape on, but I also need a profile now. And this vine is going to be round, right? So I'm just going to use that arc tool, just like I did before. We're going to create a small arc. And this arc's size is important. You know, it's kind of basically, you know, what size is my, you know, vine going to be and all that stuff. Well, if I were to measure between 2 points, if I take my measuring tool here and I measure between 2 points, if I measure basically from here to here, it's about a distance of 0.4585. And if I measure, let's say from here to here, 0.37, and then up here to here, about 0.07. So a little over a 16th. And so I don't want my arc being too fat or bulky or big. You know, I don't want to blow it up. So I'm going to start out here with 0.4. Ooh, not 4 inches. Sorry. Let me undo that. 0.45. We'll go 4.5. All right. And then from there, I'm going to hold down my control key and drag out a second one. And it's ultimately going to be winding down to this thinner area here. So the second one, I'm going to make that a width of about a 16th. Okay. So it's ultimately going to wind down from that size down to this size. I don't need 3 separate ones. I just need 2, and that'll be fine. Okay. Let's get those closer to this so we can zoom into all of this so you can see everything. Let's get right about there. And in our center rail sweep tool, we're going to select our rail. And I want to go into node editing first and make sure that this is my start point, that this is my green node here. Because I want to start from here and end up here. Okay? All right. And once I create this shape, I'll answer some of y'all's questions. Let's go ahead and go into that center rail sweep tool and select our first, our center rail first, and that's our drive rail. And then we'll select our first cross section. Okay. And that cross section is going to, you know, start here. And I've got it ending up here, right? But now I'm going to select this cross section and click over here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going from that wide all the way down to that narrow. And if I did that correctly, let's do my over under 40/60. If I click apply, I should end up with a model that gets smaller and smaller as it goes on for that vine. Now, looking at the model, you know, it's created that smaller and smaller vine, that little curlicue, but I wasn't ready. I didn't want it to get smaller just yet. I didn't want it to get smaller here in the middle. I wanted it smaller, you know, towards the tip. So let's go ahead and reset that. And what I'm going to do is let's clear the rail again and let's start this again. And I'm going to go from, on my drive rail, we're going to take this and it's going to start here, and I'm going to say probably right about here, I'll end it. And then this will come on to there. I may need my middle vector, but let's find out. I may need a mid-size one. No, that's pretty darn close. I'm not sad at that at all. I'm not sad at that at all. All right, let's reset that. And I will go ahead and throw in a middle node. Let's clear the rails. Let's close this tool for a minute. I'll go ahead and create a mid-size because I do want it a little bit fatter before it gets all the way to the tip. So I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to drag out another shape. And let's size this. Let's kind of find a happy medium. I'm okay with that. All right, let's do that again. Let's come in here and select our drive rail. We'll select our first cross section that'll start here. And I want it to run to here. This cross section will run to here. And this cross section will run to here. Let's do that 40-60. Click apply. Let's see how our model fills up. Much better. And I think I'm going to actually just stay with that. Remember, I'm remodeling this so it can be whatever, you know, shape I want. And I think as a vine, you know, as it gets towards the tip, it starts getting smaller. And I think that would probably be a natural progression. Now, if I wanted to, I could move this down further so that my middle section stays fatter longer, right? I could move that down and just simply apply that to, you know, widen things up, right? Come back and look at that and, you know, I'm happy with that. Now, the question that I'm, you know, asking myself is, you know, is that good? And I think it's good. I will leave that just like that. So I'll go ahead and keep that as a component. Okay. And so now I have, looking at the models, I have those kind of 4 sections there. Let's stop for a second and answer some questions here. Let me see if I can come back up. You guys are having a conversation with yourselves, so let me go back and find a question here. I do have a stupid one here. Where does cut the vector do? Okay, Blue Knight asked a while back ago, what does cut vector do? I can't figure it out. So, really quickly here, basically what that does is this vector is one continuous line, okay? If I were to cut the vector there, I've essentially just created 2 separate lines. Okay? I've created two separate lines. It's like taking a pair of scissors and cutting a string. All right. So, you know, it's like taking it and cutting a string. So if I have let's go into the drawing tool here. If I draw a rectangle, that is one continuous closed vector. If I come in and cut that vector anywhere, I have now, you know, opened that vector up. It's basically cutting the string. Okay, Blue Knight. So that's what cut the vector does. It cuts the vector, right, like taking a pair of scissors and snipping that line where you wanted to cut it. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, Sylvia, it's good to know that you can delete nodes, you know, to help with, you know, shaping or drawing your curves and things like that if you need to. It's very useful to be able to do that. Let's see here. Tom says, can you just do a negative boundary offset to set center? He's referring to, on my vector here, if I wanted to do an offset inward, I'm assuming, you know, we could create, you know, whatever distance it needs to be. Let's say, for instance, 1/8 of an inch. We could create that vector inward, but it's not really going to create a center line. So I assume that's what you were referring to about doing an offset to create that center line. But let me know, Tom Savadell, if that's what you meant. T. Burton says, what was the point of connecting all of those lines if the centerline tool would be used anyway? Well, T. Burton, because at this point, I'm not sure if I would use the centerline tool or if I would use my create shape tool or if I would use my 2-rail sweep tool. If I use my 2-rail sweep tool, all I have to do is cut the end of the line off here and cut the end of the line off here, and I have 2 rails that I can sweep between. If I'm going to, I could come over here and I could cut the vector here and close this off and use one tool to create that original shape and then the other tool to create the overlaps. I would much rather have the vectors closed and have my full shapes knowing what this thing is doing, so I know what tool I want to use for it. So I'm closing off these vectors just like I'm going to do with the leaf and the veins and everything else. So I can create the models using whatever tool is available to me that is applicable. So I need these shapes separated and I need these vectors closed. And then I can decide how I want to approach it. If I'm going to do a centerline tool, now that I have the closed vectors, it's easy for me to snap from one end to the other and draw my little curls in the middle, right? So that's the point. If you don't want to do it with yours, don't do it with yours, right? But I don't know how I'm going to approach creating this model. And in order to create a shape, I need one closed vector. If I'm going to use the centerline tool in my little single line sweep, then I don't need a closed vector. I can have an open one. But I don't know what I'm, at this point, when I'm redrawing and cleaning this up, trying to make sense of it all, I don't know what's going to be happening. So at this point, I'm closing off things as they need to be closed off. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Yeah, why didn't you just use the center tool? Seems like it would have saved a lot of time. Probably would have saved a lot of time, but you wouldn't learn shit about closing off vectors, would you? Right? So we're closing off the vectors, separating things, and we're approaching it how we're going to approach it, whatever modeling tool it needs to be. If I'm going to use the centerline tool, now I'll draw a center line, and you'll know how to do that as well. But if you have all these open vectors and everything, and you're like, okay, what needs to be done with them? Or if I don't create my shape, then I don't really know how to create my center line. You know, there's a lot of people that need to approach it a certain different way. This is how I approach it. I close off everything and then I draw what needs to be drawn in. Cool. All right, let's see here. Do you need the lines on each side of the center line to get the right thickness? No, but having that outline when I create my little profile that's going to follow that center line, having that outline, that closed vector there, is nice so I can see what my shape is going to be. So I can see how well that shape fills in the original outline. Right? Because I'm not even, going to be, utilizing those outlines. Can you set it off a single line and have it follow? Can you set it off a single line and have it follow, Tom says. Can you set it off a single line and have it follow? I'm assuming you're still talking about that offset to get the center line. I'm not sure. Now, let's take a look at this. We'll come into our modeling here and let's turn off this model here. And let's take a look at this as what would happen if I came into node editing and let's delete this span here and delete this span here to cut open that end, and delete this span down here to cut open that end, and now I have two rails. And if I use my two rail sweep tool and I say, okay, I want those to be my drive rails. Now I want the start points to be down here, so I'm going to reverse that rail and this one as well. Want my start points down here. And if I use this cross section and let's say I want that cross section to go to here, from there to there, and then I want this cross section to go from there to here. And I want this cross section to end up at the end here. Make sure my colors are right. Red, yellow, green. Red, yellow, green. If I apply this to create that shape, I get everything except for the loop. Let's close this tool. And again, oh, I do get that loop. Wonderful. I get that over under weave that way as well. It's kind of an over under over. Not bad, on that shape. Not too shabby. That's the two rail sweep tool. That's the single rail sweep tool. Which of the two, looks better, right? So that's why I close off vectors and all, because I have choices that I can make. I have choices that I can make, and I don't know exactly which one's going to be the better of the 2 or 3 tools that are at my disposal. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Now, in here, I have this vine comes around and it overlaps in itself and it loops around here. I have a choice here. I can draw a center line or I could use the 2-rail sweep tool. Which one would be better? Let's find out. Let's go ahead and go into node editing mode. Cut the vector here. Come all the way to the end of it. And cut the vector there. And separate these 2 ends. So that I have 2 separate vectors. Okay, 2 open vectors selected. I have this one and this one. And again, if I utilize my 3 profiles here, let's go ahead and select that and select this. Let's go into our 2-rail sweep tool, use that as our cross section, making sure the arrows are facing the correct direction. We'll start off with this cross section here. And let's say in that cross section, we'll run to here with it. So let's move that to right about there. This guy, we'll go from there to, let's say, here. And then this one will run to here. And let's apply that. Looking at our 3D model, it needs to be a merged model, not an add. And where these sections are, I don't get that loop, that over-under loop, right? So definitely not going to be the tool for the job. So reset that. I'm going to undo. So I should have one closed vector here. Yep. Okay. And so I can't use the offset tool to create my center line. I have to create my center line freehand. So the curve tool, I'm just going to start clicking in various places to get my curve to start forming. The more places I click, the more my curve will form properly. I will go into node editing and fix my curves once I get it laid out. But now that I can see my path more clearly by connecting those vectors, I can visualize it better. Some people can't just visualize things. You guys might be able to, right? You might be able to draw your center line without doing all that other work that we did. Who knows? I'm just teaching it so to make things a little bit easier to understand on our approach. Spacebar. All right, going into node editing, I'm going to come in and clean up that curve a bit. And again, the vine, you know, can take on whatever shape that you want it to. It's your model. But try to spend a little bit of time on the curve. Okay, here I'm going to insert another point so I can pull that in. And coming around this corner, I'm going to insert another point. Okay, so now that I have that path, We're going to go ahead and select that path. Go into our single rail sweep tool. Let me put this back here. Bear with me a second. We're going to use that as our drive rail. Now on this one has some wide spots, some thin spots, some wide spots. And, you know, I've got to kind of take that into consideration. So I may have multiple of these profiles that I'd want, or I can just let it create the natural flow to whatever it's going to create. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a point where it's going to go from one size to another. To a little bit bigger size. Back to a smaller. In this fashion. Now in this tool, the drive rail, I'm going to use the cross section again, so we'll start off with this one. That will start here, and I will have that travel all the way to here. This next one will travel from here all the way to here. I'm going to have it get a little bit wider from here to here. And then from there to here. And then finally from here to here. Let's go ahead and see what that does for us. Doesn't quite fill very well there. I may need bigger vectors, or bigger, vectors. Let's look at our model here. And I need that 40/60. Let's recreate that. Yeah, I need much bigger vectors here. So we're going to reset that. This vine's got to be much wider. All right, let's look at my sizes here. 1 inch, a little under 5/8, a little under an inch. All right, let's try that again. So let's see if we can fill that up. So from here, that's going to be our drive rail. We'll start off with the wider part of the vine to about here. This one will go to here. These two are about the same size. All right, let's apply that. Okay. $40.60, click apply. And look at our 3D view. Not happy at all with that over under. It should be under, over, under, over, under. Okay, it's not creating that weave. Like I would like. So one more time, let's reset this. I want to look at the option of, let's clear the rails. Let's go from here. Let's select this tool here. I'm sorry, this rail. Use that cross section. Let's start from here and here. $40.60. Weave, apply. Nope. All right, so we are going to not use the centerline tool for this main part, but we will use the centerline tool here. I need this to go over, under, over, under. Let's look how this is. Under, over, over, under, over, over. All right, it's a pretty twisted weave. I'm not getting that effect here. So let's delete that. And what is going to give me that effect? I'm going to go into node editing, and I'm going to cut the vector back here. And I'm going to try that center rail sweep tool. I want this to be the start point. Okay, we're going to go from here that'll start there, and then end here. Hmm, 40, 60. Apply. Okay. That's going to be the over, under, over, under, over, under swirl. Now I need this to weave with this. Okay, so all right, two different rails. We have this rail and this rail. Those are going to be our drive rails. We have a start point from there to here, and then another start point from here to there. They're crossing each other, so we should be able to get that cross section. Okay, and then all right, let's go ahead and 40, 60. Let's see if that does it for us using two separate vectors. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. That is correct, but is the wrong size vectors. So this shape is going to be red. And let's apply that again. Nope. Oh, son of a bum. Let's see here. Okay, so let's reset that. Clear the rails. Got one line going from there to there. This one going from there to there. All right. This from here, this to here. Click apply. Okay, I can live with that. Start a new component. This from here to here, and this to there. Click apply. Now the problem with that is the blend. What are you guys at over there? Let's see here. Late to the party. Laney, thank you for teaching this stuff. It's building blocks for me. Great, wonderful. When you're done editing a model or project, do you suggest converting to Bezier curves to lower down the points? Probably spelled that wrong. No, I actually recommend when you create a model that we should be creating this in the highest resolution possible so there's no pixelation in the model, which I didn't talk to you about. In the job setup, I'm actually using just a very high resolution instead of the extremely high. But technically, anytime we're building a model, we want an extremely high resolution. Most likely, I'll end up remaking this after our class is finished. I'll end up remaking this in a much higher resolution so there's no pixelation in the model. I do not know if that's what you're referring to, Mark, but I definitely don't want to lower down the points in a model. Do the arcs need to be in the order they are used, or can you reuse the arcs? Well, they have to be in an order that this vector and this vector are overlapping each other. So if I select them simultaneously, I need to be able to select them at the same time. I need to have these two lines intersecting with one another. This line and this line. Now this would be our drive rails. And therefore this to this and I need some separation between these. On purpose, I'm going to create a gap between those lines. From here to here. And then here. Bear with me a minute. There. Okay, that will go with those two. And then this from here. This red node here, that is going to be this vector. And I need it to be this vector. I don't know if that's going to work either. No. Okay, let's select this. Oh, you son of a gun. See, that red anchor there identifies which vector is going to be used at that anchor. Okay. Let's try that. Much better. Okay. But I'm still not getting the intersection if I don't weave, we get a model like this. I don't want a model like that. I want to weave it. Okay, so this 1/16 of an inch cross section is going to be too small, because the smaller it goes, the thinner it gets. It doesn't have enough height to overlap. Example. With the height, I would get the over, under that I'm looking for, but not the size. So what that means is I need to give this shape some height. And I have to give it base height. Now, it's not going to be a matter of stretching it. It's going to be a matter of adding base height to the parts. Because if I stretch it, this is why this is challenging my modeling My modeling challenge. Alright, I've got these two vectors. It's my drive rails. This is going to start here. This one's going to end here. This one is going to start here. That one's going to start there. And this one is going to end here. So everything is great and golden and dandy, except for I'm getting too skinny too soon. Too small too soon. So then I'm going to take this and have it start here. No, that was worse. Okay, so I've got to figure this out. So guys and girls, all right, this is 10:21. This is where we're going to leave for this week. This is going to be a, like I said, a more than a one-part class. I don't know the best way to approach this weave. All the other weaves I can handle, but when this is one continuous weave that's supposed to wrap not only on itself but to another object, I've got over, under, over. this should be over. Let me look at the picture again. This vine goes underneath not only this here, but also this leg. It goes underneath both. This goes over both. It goes under itself here and then over the main vine. Under, over. Under the main vine, over itself, and then over the vine again. That is going to be a challenging piece. The only way I could see that being accomplished is to take each of the sections and cut them into sections and model them independently. I do not see the weave tool giving me the desired result that I want, because this part should be under here, not only under here but also under here, and then over both of those. It should go under this and over that. So it's not going to create the right pattern. Okay? So in our next class, we've got our vectors separated. We've got some of the components started. We've got our layers. In our next class, we will have that. I'll have the solution for that vine. Once we get past the vine, then we'll work on the grapes, the leaf. Those should be pretty quick. And then the grain. Should be able to wrap this up. But it is already 10:24. We have went through a lot of time on this. I've got the correct weave that I want for this model here. That's the pattern that I want for that model. Over, under for that vine. This lower vine may need to be cut up into sections and modeled from those sections. We're going to fill that out, figure that out. Hopefully you got something out of this for a little bit of the stuff that we did. The approach is different. Like I said, this is me challenging. It's a challenging of my modeling skills, and evidently my modeling skills are not that great tonight because I hadn't figured it out in 3 hours. So, next week we'll continue this project. We'll finish it off. When it's all said and done, we will have a beautiful model. You mark my word. We will have a very nice model that y'all will have. You'll get that model for free. But this one's going to require me to do a little bit of thinking. And whatever I think on, whatever solution I come up with, I will walk you through how I came across what the resolution is. So you're not missing anything at all. But I'll spend the next couple of days looking at this, at the different approaches, and see what would be the best approach to get exactly what we want. And I will let you know. All right, guys and girls, until next time, we'll continue this next week. This is part 1. Sorry it took so long to get this far. We'll see you next Tuesday. See you guys.